Hello, this is Thomas, and you've been flipped. No, not like that, and definitely not like this either. You've been flipped in the information and communications technology sense of the word. Essentially, flipping is a classroom management technique, and in a flipped classroom, something that's traditionally done in class is now done at home, and something that's traditionally done at home is now completed in class. An early pioneer of this is Sal Khan, who made math videos like this.
I'll now show you how to convert a fraction into a decimal. And if we have time, maybe we'll learn how to do a decimal into a fraction. So let's start with what I would say is a fairly straightforward example. Let's start with a fraction 1/2, and I want to convert that into a decimal.
Khan is using a screencasting tool such as Camtasia, which I'm using now, and then putting these videos up on YouTube. A screencasting tool allows you to record what you see on your computer screen and to record your voice at the same time. So, flipping evangelists typically make the following assumptions about the traditional classroom. They assume that when a teacher is presenting new information, that they presume that the students are passively watching, that the teacher speaks and the students listen. Then students go home and they attempt exercises based on the presentation of the new information. In the flipped classroom, teachers don't present in class. They make videos like this one, and they have students watch these videos at home as homework. Then they have students do exercises in class. And the idea is that it's when students are attempting to do exercises based on a presentation of new material, it's then that they really need their teacher. So the idea of this flipping is that the teacher now can use classroom time to give individual attention to every student in the class. So I haven't been flipping quite in the same way as you've just seen, but the concept definitely has inspired me to change my classroom management strategies. So I'd like to show you 3 different kinds of videos that I'm making and explain their purposes. And I'd also like to show you how the concept of flipping has inspired what I do with the LMS. I want my students to have videos of conceptually difficult material. I may present this in class, but I'd like them to be able to see it again and again and again on video, should they wish. In this example, students are learning the strategy of reading and analyzing the organization of information in a text, the organization both throughout the text but also the organization within a sentence in order to improve their writing. Notice that I've been able to provide captions for what I say on the clip. Please also note that the audio track is much clearer on YouTube than I've been able to record here. This is a review of the lesson preparing for the quiz, writing about a statue. So our objective is to help you prepare for the quiz, for the section of the quiz that involves you writing a short essay on one single sculpture. And this is how we're going to help you prepare for the quiz. We're going to analyze a text to determine what is the content. For example, what is the information contained in the text? And then, how is this information or content organized? And we're going to look at that in terms of throughout the whole text, how the content is organized within a paragraph, and also how the content is organized within a sentence. Also, we're going to take a look at what kind of specific art history vocabulary is used to describe this sculpture in the text, and because we really want you to use similar kinds of vocabulary in your own writing. Next, you are going to do it. You are going to, in class, you will prepare for the quiz by writing about a sculpture using what we studied. This is the text that we're going to use, and you'll recognize right away that this is not the text, not the exact text that you have in your art history textbook in Jansen's, but it's essentially very, very similar in terms of how the content is arranged, the kind of content that's included, and the kind of vocabulary that's used to describe this piece. Before we look at the text, I'd like you to make a list of the things that you expect to find in the text. For example, a description of material, an indication of the civilization where the piece comes from. Please make a list of those kinds of things. Please pause this video and then restart it when you're done with your list. So, this is a list of the things that we might expect to find.
One of the key parts of this lesson is the sentence-by-sentence analysis, where I require students to see that every time that something is described in the sculpture, it is shortly followed by a piece of analysis. And this is one of the things that my students often struggle to get. What I like about Camtasia is the ability that I have now to be able to post a presentation about this so that students can look at it again and again, but also the way in which the annotation tools in Camtasia allow me to annotate the text to make it very visually clear what I'm trying to teach.
So here's the main description of the pose, that the king is seated in a formulaic pose, and here is the analysis of that pose. This pose displays the king's royal qualities. Next, we have an additional description of that pose. It's described as a rigidly frontal pose. And then you'll notice that the analysis is that this rigidly frontal pose allows the king for all time to witness the events, the rituals in the Valley Temple performed for him.
So the second kind of videos that I'm preparing have to do with grammar, and I call these pop-up grammar videos. Pop-up grammar is the grammar that pops up in class. It's grammar that's not necessarily part of your lesson plan or even your syllabus, but it comes up and you have to deal with it. We're going to look at 3 clips from the same example, which relates to a very common error in art history relating to the use of prepositions with made. We're going to look at the introduction, we're going to look at the presentation, and then we're going to look at the wrap-up at the end of the clip.
English for Art and Design, pop-up grammar, prepositions with made. Errors with prepositions and made are very frequent. So we're going to take a look at this in the following video. We're going to use 2 examples. The first example is the statue of David. Well, put on your shorts, David. And here's an example of a common accuracy issue. The statue is made by stone. Well, as we know, the statue is made of stone. So we're going to look at made with the following prepositions: of, by, from, in, and made with. The other example we're going to take a look at is a chair made by Frank Gehry. You know, I'm sure, Frank Gehry. He's very famous for this particular building, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. He is an architect, but he's also a designer of furniture and jewellery. He designed this chair, which is called the Wiggle Chair. So let's take a look and see if we can find some of this language in context. So we are now looking at a website. It's from a design museum in Sydney, and let's see if we can find any description of the Wiggle Chair. Well, here we are. Designed by Frank Gehry, the United States, in 1972. Made by Vitra in saw that the chair was made
This
by
is part of the
Vitra.
main grammar
Vitra
presentation.
is the name of the company that manufactured the chair. Let's take a look at another example. Back to David. The statue of David was made by Michelangelo. So we can see here that when we're talking about the artist or the designer or the company or indeed the brand, we can say made by. So for the maker, either a person, a brand or a company, we will use the preposition by. Okay, are you ready?
Part of the wrap-up. On Google Drive you can make auto-correcting quizzes. These are emailed to the students take the quiz, and the results are mailed to you and your students. So when I correct a learner's writing and I notice that they have an issue with prepositions with made, I can refer them to the pop-up grammar video on YouTube. Then I can send them this quiz and they can take the quiz. And you know, there's a lot of evidence that frequent low stakes quizzes really help learners' accuracy. So the third and final kind of video that I'd like to show you today are videos that relate to the technology that students have to use or want to use. For example, if I get this kind of request on my LMS, you know, how do I use the library electronic articles and databases, then I can refer to the following video on YouTube. I'm going to use the URL library.pratt.edu, and this will take us to the library main page. Then we will go to the articles and databases there on the right, and this should take us to the page with the link to the various databases. And so as you can see, I'm not flipping in the way that Sal Khan was flipping the math lessons. I'm not presenting new material to my students on video while they're at home. Instead, I'm making videos to provide a permanent resource of certain important lesson ideas, such as reading strategies. And my hope is that this will create more time for me, because I won't have to repeat them again and again in class, that I'll be able to refer students to it. And another way is that I can use videos to assist differentiated learning, because rather than doing particular grammar explanations in class over and over again, that I can just send students to YouTube to look at specific videos that I've already made. So when we met in September, I told you how my wonderful nephew came to stay with me and how he was on Facebook all the time. I hadn't used Facebook before, but seeing him use it, I thought that it would make a very effective LMS for me. And it has. I've been using Facebook for my LMS now for 2 semesters, and it has been working very well. My students, each class is in a group, and that's a private group, so other students cannot see what a particular group of students are seeing in their group. All of my students also are a member of Resources. So the Resources section is the self-access part of my MLS, and as you can see, I can upload the pop-up grammar or other screencast videos that I've made. I've included information from, these are just other websites by the way, how to do MLA formatting, how to prevent plagiarism, and a thesaurus. Our regular LMS, but also my Facebook LMS, can allow for a kind of flipping, because I can have students do now what I used to have them do in class. One of the things that used to take a lot of time in my class was giving feedback on presentations. Often the feedback then became uneven, because if I had several students presenting, we would all be enthusiastic at the beginning, but then our energy would seriously lag. And the same too would occur for peer reviewing of academic papers in class. Maybe the first paper that we reviewed we were doing energetically, and then after that, not so. I used to record students' presentations using a camera and then download them to my computer and then upload them myself to my own YouTube site. Now, we improvise a stand like this. We use the student's own smartphone as the recording device, and they're responsible for uploading the file to Facebook and to YouTube. So in the past, some of my students would end up with this kind of minimal feedback. With the videos pasted on an LMS, now this allows me to do self-analysis, where a student can actually analyze their own presentation and then have other students give feedback. Of course, we discuss the criteria for the feedback beforehand, and if a student doesn't provide enough of a self-analysis or a critique of another work, I can just say, do it again, which actually would use an awful lot of class time, but this is homework. So we do this with objects which students record and narrate while they're on a field trip, and for paraphrasing activities. Facebook also conveniently shows me who has actually looked at the activities or notifications that I've posted on the LMS. So these self-analysis and peer critiquing activities are examples of things that I used to do in class that I now have students do for homework. Of course, it's best for students if actually we start the activities in class and do one or two examples and then have them continue the activity as homework. So I look forward to answering any questions that you may have when we have our meeting. Thank you for watching.